The future of the Western alliance is hanging by a thread. A single statement from a single man has sent shockwaves from Brussels to Washington. Donald Trump has declared Europe must get its act together, warning he would encourage Russia to attack NATO allies who don't pay their way. This isn't just campaign rhetoric. This is a direct threat to the security architecture that has kept the peace for generations. And it's happening right now as Ukraine fights for its survival. The world order is being rewritten before our eyes. To understand the magnitude of this moment, we have to go back. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, was founded in 1949. Its core principle is Article 5: an attack on one member is an attack on all. It was the bedrock of Western defense against the Soviet Union. For decades, American presidents of both parties championed this alliance. It was untouchable. Then came 2016. Candidate Donald Trump called NATO obsolete. As president, he privately threatened to withdraw the United States. His constant refrain: European nations were not paying their fair share for their own defense. The benchmark is a 2014 agreement where all NATO members pledged to move towards spending 2% of their gross domestic product on defense. For years, many European nations, enjoying the American security umbrella, lagged behind. Trump weaponized this disparity. Now, as the 2024 Republican frontrunner, he has escalated dramatically. At a rally in South Carolina, he recounted a conversation he claimed to have with the leader of a big country. He said he would tell Russia, quote, "Do whatever the hell you want to nations that are delinquent." This is not a policy paper. This is a campaign trail bombshell with immediate, real-world consequences. The timing is critical. We are approaching the 2-year mark of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Ukrainian troops are running low on ammunition and morale. A crucial $60 billion U.S. aid package is stalled in Congress, with many Trump allies opposing it. European nations are scrambling to fill the gap, but they cannot replace American capacity alone. In this climate of uncertainty, Trump's words are not just commentary. They are a strategic signal to Moscow, a threat to allies, and a potential blueprint for a second term. The key players are clear: Donald Trump, reshaping American foreign policy from the campaign trail; Vladimir Putin, watching and waiting for any sign of Western division; and European leaders like Germany's Olaf Scholz and Poland's Andrzej Duda, who are now forced to confront a terrifying possibility: a future America that may not come to their defense. So, what exactly did Trump say, and what are the hard facts? Let's break it down. The statement came on February 10, 2024. Trump was speaking to supporters in Conway, South Carolina. He described a hypothetical scenario with the president of a NATO nation who hadn't met spending targets. Trump quoted himself saying, "You didn't pay, you're delinquent? No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. You gotta pay your bills." The word encourage is the explosive part. It transforms a policy dispute over funding into an active invitation for aggression. The White House responded swiftly, calling the comments appalling and unhinged. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg stated, "Any suggestion that allies will not defend each other undermines all of our security, including that of the US, but the damage was done." Let's look at the numbers. According to NATO's own estimates for 2023, only 11 of the 31 member states are expected to meet the 2% GDP defense spending target. That's up from just 3 nations in 2014, showing progress, but it leaves 20 nations below the line. The biggest European economies are a mixed picture. Germany, long criticized for underspending, is now on track to hit 2% this year, a direct response to the war in Ukraine. France is at 1.9%. Italy is at 1.46%. Canada, a frequent target of Trump's ire, sits at just 1.38%. On the other side, frontline states bordering Russia have long exceeded the target. Poland is a standout, spending an estimated 3.9% of its GDP on defense this year. The Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, are all above 2.5%. This data reveals a fundamental split in the alliance: those who feel the immediate threat and spend accordingly, and those who have historically felt more insulated. Expert analysis is nearly unanimous in its alarm. Dr. Rachel Rizzo, a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council's Europe Center, told us, "This rhetoric is a gift to Putin. It tells him that the core commitment of NATO is negotiable, that American leadership is conditional and transactional. It undermines deterrence not in some abstract future, but today, as commanders on the ground make calculations." Former U.S. Ambassador to NATO, Ivo Dalder, called it the most dangerous statement ever made by a former U.S. president regarding the alliance. The core fact is this: NATO's strength has never been just about money. It's about the unwavering credibility of Article 5. Trump's statement directly attacks that credibility. But this story isn't one-sided. There are other perspectives we must examine. Trump's defenders and a segment of the American public argue he is simply using blunt language to address a long-standing problem. They point out that for years, European leaders made promises they didn't keep, relying on U.S. taxpayers to shoulder the burden. Former Trump National Security Advisor John Bolton, while critical of the encouraged language, has acknowledged the pressure did spur increased European spending. The argument is that Trump's transactional, America First approach finally forced a complacent Europe to take its own defense seriously. However, the opposition viewpoint from within the U.S. and Europe is fierce. President Biden has framed the 2024 election as a battle for the soul of American democracy and its global leadership. He stated, "My predecessor has made it clear he'd abandon our NATO allies if Russia attacks." In Europe, the reaction moves beyond anger to profound strategic reassessment. French President Emmanuel Macron has been advocating for years for strategic autonomy for Europe. The ability to defend itself without relying solely on the U.S. Trump's latest comments are a massive accelerant to this idea. If you're not sure the umbrella will be there when it rains, you start carrying your own, a senior EU diplomat told the Financial Times anonymously. International reaction extends beyond Europe. In Asia, allies like Japan and South Korea, who also depend on U.S. security guarantees, are watching nervously. If America's commitment to NATO is conditional, what does that mean for its treaties with Tokyo or Seoul? China's state media has predictably seized on the discord, portraying it as proof of Western decline and instability. The deeper implication here is the potential unraveling of the post-World War II international system. That system, for all its flaws, was built on alliances, multilateral institutions, and shared democratic values. Trump's vision replaces that with bilateral deals, explicit threats, and a doctrine where protection is a billable service, not a mutual pledge. Furthermore, analysts are digging into the legal and political ramifications. Could a U.S. president unilaterally refuse to honor Article 5? The treaty is a formal commitment ratified by the Senate. Withdrawing would be a complex process, but a president could simply choose not to respond militarily, effectively nullifying the treaty through inaction. This creates a dangerous gray zone where adversaries might test the boundaries, believing they can attack a delinquent ally without triggering a full U.S. response. The implication is a NATO that exists on paper but is fractured and unreliable in practice, which may be exactly what Putin hopes to achieve. Now, let's bring this down to earth. How does this high-stakes diplomacy affect ordinary people? First, security. For a family in Riga, Latvia, or Warsaw, Poland, these statements are terrifying. They live a few hundred miles from the Russian border. Their sense of safety is inextricably linked to the certainty that America has their back. That certainty is now poisoned with doubt. Parents, think about it. Business owners making long-term investments, think about it. The psychological impact is immediate, even if no tank moves an inch. Second, the economic impact. Uncertainty is the enemy of markets and growth. If the foundational security guarantee of Europe is in question, it affects everything. Energy prices could become more volatile. Defense budgets, already rising, will have to skyrocket further, pulling billions away from healthcare, education, and infrastructure. For the average German or Italian taxpayer, this means higher taxes or reduced public services to fund a massive military buildup they thought was unnecessary. For American taxpayers, the irony is profound. The America First argument intended to save money could lead to a far more dangerous and militarized world, requiring even higher U.S. defense spending in the long run. Socially and politically, this fuels polarization on both sides of the Atlantic. In Europe, it empowers nationalist, anti-American, and pro-Russian political factions. It creates a bitter divide between those who want to deepen ties with a potentially unreliable U.S. and those who want to break away. In America, it turns national security, once a unifying issue, into another partisan football. The political ramification is a less stable, more fragmented West, precisely at a time when authoritarian powers are aligning. What happens next? The immediate consequence is a frantic diplomatic push by European capitals to Trump-proof NATO. This means accelerating plans for a European pillar within NATO, stockpiling weapons collectively, and streamlining command structures so Europe can act more independently if needed. It also means a desperate push to get more aid to Ukraine now, before the U.S. election potentially changes everything. For ordinary Ukrainians in Bakhmut or Avdiivka, the consequence is stark. Their lifeline is under threat, and their enemy is being given a reason to wait them out. So, what are the experts concluding? The consensus is that we have crossed a Rubicon. Dr. Charles Kupchan of the Council on Foreign Relations told us, This is not a gaffe. It's a deliberate strategy of deconstructing the liberal international order. The message to allies is you're on your own, and to adversaries it's the coast is clear. Historians are drawing comparisons, not to recent presidencies, but to the 1930s when American isolationism allowed aggressors to act with impunity. Comparisons to similar situations are limited because there is no similar situation in the NATO era. The closest parallel might be the Suez Crisis of 1956, when the US opposed its British and French allies, revealing a shift in power. But that was a policy disagreement, not a fundamental rejection of the alliance itself. Experts in international law stress that Trump's hypothetical scenario could constitute a breach of the NATO treaties, good faith obligation, fundamentally violating international law. Predictions are grim. The most likely forecast is for a period of strategic limbo. Europe will rush to build its own capacity, but won't be ready for years. The US will remain a distracted and unpredictable partner. This limbo is the most dangerous phase of all. It invites miscalculation. Putin might see an opportunity for a limited strike or escalation in Ukraine, testing whether NATO's response is coordinated or fractured. The forecast, therefore, is for increased global instability, higher defense costs worldwide, and a new, more dangerous era of geopolitics where might makes right, and alliances are just pieces of paper. The key takeaway is this: a cornerstone of global stability has been cracked. Whether it holds depends on the American voter in November and Europe's ability to unite under pressure. Watch for European defense spending announcements, the fate of Ukraine aid, and any reaction from the Kremlin. The world is watching, and the stakes could not be higher. For continuing, in-depth coverage of this and all stories reshaping our world, subscribe to Kenya News Update today for more breaking news.